It's Christmas, the season of one more thing. One last mad dash to the mall for the office party Secret Santa, one last string of lights down the banister to tie it all together. One last Christmas party on the calendar, one last box, last bag, last ribbon, last present, one last letter to Santa. One last handmade ornament, one last stocking stuffer. One more, one more, one more, one more, one more, one more. It's easy to get so caught up in trying to make the holiday perfect that we forget we've already been given an incredible gift, the gift of enough.
So ready or not, it's Christmas. I'm saying it's not beginning to look like Christmas. It is here, 15 days away. And over these next 15 days, most of us will find ourselves caught up in a full-on 5-alarm mad dash to the holiday finish line. We'll overschedule, overspend, and yes, probably overeat. It's just kind of what we do this time of year. In fact, by the time we get to Christmas morning, many of us will be slumped over in a chair in a holiday haze, surrounded by empty boxes, piles of wrapping paper, and vowing that next year is going to be different. Problem is, that's the same promise we made to ourselves last year. Now look, don't get me wrong. I'm no Scrooge. I love the Christmas season. I love everything about it. I love the music. I love the lights. I love the decorations. I have 9 inflatable Christmas decorations in my front yard right now. I have 3 different Christmas trees inside my house, and one of them's got a pretty little toy train that just draws circles around the bottom. I'm into Christmas, but if I'm honest, I have to admit that sometimes there is a disconnect between what we're celebrating at Christmas and the way that we celebrate at Christmas, right? I mean, think about it. We celebrate the birth of the Prince of Peace by intentionally cranking up the chaos this time of year. We celebrate Jesus born to peasant parents in a poor backwater village of Bethlehem in a borrowed stall or stable where animals live. And you know how we celebrate that? By spending about $40 billion buying things that are not needed with money we don't really have to buy gifts for people we're not even sure we really like all that much. It's hard to keep Christ in the center of Christmas. In fact, that's another thing that's going to happen over these next 3 weeks. We will renew once again our national conversation about keeping Christ in Christmas. You'll start to see it on Facebook where we're all bent out of shape because the greeter at Walmart said Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas. And the cable news networks will fill up their allotted slots with the talking heads debating about whether or not it's okay to put a manger scene on public property. And we'll get all into that and get all emotionally stirred up about that. But isn't the bigger question not really whether or not the community or the culture keeps Christ in Christmas, but the bigger question is, am I keeping Christ in Christmas? And so to help us do that, we're in this series of messages called The Gift of Enough. And the goal of this series is to help all of us recognize that no matter who we are, where we've been, what we're going through, what we are dealing with, that the birth of Jesus provides more than enough for all of us. It's interesting to me that John, one of Jesus' closest followers, when he sat down to write his gospel, his version of Jesus' life story, he started with the birth of Jesus. But unlike Matthew and Luke, he didn't focus on the details of Jesus' birth. He didn't tell us about manger scenes and stars and shepherds and singing angels and wise men. He focused on the meaning of Jesus' birth, what that birth means to us. Look at what John writes, John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then the Word became flesh and made His dwelling among us. God didn't send a gift that first Christmas. He became the gift that first Christmas. Think about this. The same God who declared on Mount Sinai to Moses that He was Yahweh, the great I am that I am. That exact same God wraps Himself in human flesh and enters the broken messiness, not just of our world, but of our individual lives. The God who is more than enough became the gift of enough, and that is the heart of what we celebrate this time of year. You know, missing Jesus in Christmas is not new. We're not the first culture to get caught up and so busy with life that we miss this amazing gift. In fact, think about it. It happened the very first Christmas. Of the tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people who lived in a 5-mile radius of Bethlehem that first Christmas, probably less than 30 people actually even knew anything significant had happened, right? Maybe Mary, Joseph, some shepherds, a really whacked out king named Herod, some wise astronomers who came from the east, but everybody else missed it, and it was right there, this most amazing thing ever, and they missed it. But interestingly, there were 2 other people that first Christmas who didn't miss it, who got to experience the gift of enough. Most of you probably never heard of these 2 people. They don't appear in your manger scene. They're not going to show up on your Christmas cards this year, and yet I believe they are key players in the birth narrative of Jesus. You'll find their story in the second half of Luke chapter 2. So if you have a Bible or a Bible app, turn or click there. That's where we're going to be hanging out. You all know the first half of Luke chapter 2, right? It's the story of Jesus' birth and all of that. But we usually skip over the second half of the chapter, but it's got some good stuff for us to learn. The 2 people I'm talking about are a man named Simeon and a woman named Anna. And the reason you probably don't know them or haven't seen them in a Christmas pageant is they're a little late to the dance. They don't show up at the manger in Bethlehem the first Christmas night. They show up in a crowded courtyard outside the temple in the capital city of Jerusalem 6 weeks after Jesus was born. Because Jesus was born to a devout Jewish family, there were certain religious rituals and ceremonies that had to take place with the birth of a child. The first of such ceremonies took place exactly 8 days after the birth of the child. 8 days after a Jewish child is born, they are given their name. And if the child is a male, they are circumcised. That ceremony, that celebration takes place in the home. But if it is the firstborn child, there is another ceremony that needs to take place, not in the home, but in the temple in Jerusalem. These firstborn children were to be taken by their parents to the temple to be dedicated, to be consecrated to God as their firstborn. It was a ceremony that entailed the sacrifice of animals, a blessing from the high priest, and the parents would literally hold up the child and express verbally that they recognized that this child was not theirs, that it came from God, and that this child belonged to God. The reason it took 6 weeks to have this ceremony is because of the fact that because Mary had given birth and because Joseph had probably assisted in the birth, they were both ceremonially unclean. They couldn't go into the temple for 40 days. There was this whole 40-day purification process that they had to go through in order to be able to go into the temple, make the sacrifice, and dedicate their firstborn child to God. So when the 6 weeks ends, Mary wraps up 6-week-old baby Jesus, probably in swaddling clothes again, and she and Joseph and the baby Jesus make the 2-mile journey to the capital city of Jerusalem. In order to get to the temple, they have to go through one of 2 large temple courts. And these temple courts are always crowded, always busy. They're money changers. They're selling animals for sacrifice. The best way to understand what the temple courts are like is think Walmart on Black Friday. Right? It's chaos, it's packed. So imagine, here's Mary, precious little 6-week-old baby Jesus. She and Joseph are trying to make their way through this massive crowd, and as they're headed that way, they see out of the corner of the eye an old man who is looking at them. He's staring at them, and he starts moving towards them, right? And they realize he's not staring at them, he's staring at their baby. Right? And they're thinking, what is going on here? This is getting weird. And when he gets there, he says to Mary, give me that baby. I got to hold that baby. Let me have that baby. Moms, can you imagine the first time you bring your precious new baby to church on a Sunday morning and you're walking through the lobby out there and some weird old guy you've never seen before and you don't know comes running up and says, let me hold that baby? You're like, creeper alert, security, somebody tased this dude, right? This is getting weird. But you know what Mary does? This is remarkable. Mary hands 6-week-old baby Jesus into the arms of this man she's never met before. See, here's the thing. Mary didn't need some ceremony at church to recognize that this baby did not belong to her. That this baby had come for the whole world. And just when you think this scene can't get any weirder, this 100-plus-year-old weird church lady, she starts coming up. She's some kind of weird prophetess or some kind of religious, person. And she comes up, starts thanking God, and then she starts yelling to all the other people in the courtyard, hey, everybody, come see the baby. You got to see this baby. This is probably why it doesn't show up in our Christmas pageants. It's a weird encounter, right? It is awkward. But if we unpack it a little bit, if we understand some of the context of what's going on here, it has some very practical truth for us today. Some very practical ways to help us experience the gift of enough this Christmas in the midst of all the chaos and weird awkwardness that we go through this time of year. 3 things we learn about experiencing the gift of enough. You might want to write these down. Number 1, to experience the gift of enough, I have to have the right expectations. I have to have the right expectations. Expectations matter. They influence us, and our expectations influence the people around us. A lesson I learned very early in my teaching and coaching career. I quickly realized that my level of expectation for my students and my athletes had a huge impact on their performance. If I didn't expect much from them, I did not get much from them. But if I raised the bar, if I had high expectations for them, they may not achieve all those expectations, but it increased the level of their performance. In a similar way, my expectations, your expectations for Christmas will have a big impact on the type of Christmas you're going to have. It was certainly true for Simeon. Notice verse 25. It says, at that time there was a man in Jerusalem named Simeon. He was a righteous and devout and was eagerly waiting. You see that? He was eagerly waiting for the Messiah to come and rescue Israel. The reason Simeon experienced the gift of enough, the reason he could see what nobody else could see, is because he was expecting to see it. Christmas is full of expectations, isn't it? 'Tis the season of expectations. The problem is most of us have unrealistic expectations this time of year. That's one of the reasons this time of year is so stressful. We have unrealistic expectations on ourselves and unrealistic expectations on others. And let's just be honest, we all got a little Clark W. Griswold in us, don't we? Right? You know the movie I'm talking about, Christmas Vacation? Look, for the two of you who haven't seen it here today, Clark W. Griswold is just an average suburban guy. He's a husband and father, and all he wants to do is provide for his family a good old-fashioned family Christmas. But the truth is, what he really was expecting is that everything go perfect. And it doesn't. It's nowhere near perfect. Dude's tree catches on fire Christmas Eve. A squirrel gets loose in the house. The SWAT team kicks in his windows and doors. By the end of Christmas Eve, he's looking for a bottle of Jack Daniels and some Tylenol just to get through the night. Let me reduce some of your stress this Christmas. Can I just help you in this way? Free bonus content, no extra charge. Let me help you remove some of your Christmas stress. You are not Chip and Joanna Gaines. You're not. You're not going to have perfect decorations. Your holiday meal's not going to be perfect. Your turkey may be dry. You're probably not going to remember to get all the batteries you need for Christmas morning. And not everybody is going to love the gift that you picked for them. And guess what? It's okay. You don't need perfect circumstances to have a great Christmas. You just need to pause and remember that you've already been given the gift of enough. Experiencing that gift of enough is not just about removing our unrealistic expectations, but it's also about having the right expectations. For Simeon, seeing the Messiah was not a casual desire. It was not something, it'd be really nice if before I die I could see the Messiah. I'd really like to see God's promise fulfilled at some point in my life. No, for Simeon, this was the driving force of his life. How do I know that? Because look at what he says. After Mary hands him the baby Jesus, verse 29 and 30, look at what he says. Now, Lord, you can let me, your servant, die in peace, as you've said. With my own eyes, I have seen your salvation. See, apparently, Simeon had prayed and had asked God to allow him to see the Messiah before he died. And for some reason, God grants that prayer request. What would your prayer request be? What would be the one thing you're praying, God, before I die, let me what? Maybe it has to do with your kids. Right? Lord, before I die, let me walk my daughter down the aisle. Lord, please let me live long enough to see my son get a real job and become financially self-supportive. Lord, let me live long enough to get this mortgage paid off. Lord, let me live long enough to enjoy just a few good years of retirement. I don't know what your prayer would be, and I can't promise you that God would grant that prayer, but I can promise you this. You can experience the gift of enough this Christmas. And it don't matter whether the greeter at Walmart says Happy Holidays or Merry Christmas. And it's not dependent on whether or not the government allows a manger scene to be put on public property. The only thing that matters is, like Simeon, am I willing to be looking for it? Am I looking for it? Do I have expectations of it? 30 years after that first Christmas, Jesus, in his most famous sermon of all time, the Sermon on the Mount, says these words, makes this promise in Matthew 7. Search and you will find. Knock, and the door will be open for you. Everyone who searches will find. And everyone who knocks will have the door open. Do you understand that promise? It's for you. It doesn't matter where you've been, where you've done, what kind of family you were raised in. It doesn't matter how broken you've been, how sinful you've been. It doesn't matter what you were doing last night, last year, or last decade. The only thing that matters is, are you willing to seek? Are you willing to knock? Are you willing to search? And by the way, in case you don't know this, Cedar Creek Church from day one for the last 30 years, and God willing for the next 130 years, is a place designed for people who are knocking and seeking and searching and are skeptical. If that's you, welcome to the family, because we're all on a journey back to Jesus. We're all just trying to link arms and stumble closer to Him. So come on, join us with your unanswerable questions. Join us with your anger at God. Join us with your frustration. Just keep seeking and keep knocking and keep searching. If you want to experience the gift of enough, you got to have the right expectations. But it doesn't stop there. There's a second thing we got to be willing to do. And this is tougher. We have to be willing to embrace Jesus in our pain. I have to embrace Jesus in my pain. See, for some of us here today, what keeps us from keeping Christ in Christmas is not the chaos of the season, it's the pain of the season. Christmas has a way of cranking up the volume on the pain and the loneliness in our lives. Emotions that we are able to keep at bay all throughout the rest of the year just have a way of bubbling to the surface at Christmas. The holiday season, the songs, the sights, every perfect little family you see, everything you hear just feels like it's shining the spotlight on what is missing and broken in your life. And that's where some of us are today. Some of you are facing your first Christmas without that family member. And you're going to stare the reality of the empty chair right in its face. Some of you are about to go through your first Christmas since the separation and divorce. Some of you are facing your first Christmas since you lost your job. And you're not worried about trying to keep Jesus the reason for the season. You're just wishing you could push the fast forward button and somehow get to the first of the year. You know why I know that? Because I've walked that journey at some level every Christmas for the last 5 years. And why, yes, sometimes I feel joy, sometimes I feel a hole in my heart and my life, and I just want to get on and pass the holidays. But I would say to you, as I'm saying to me, for those of us who struggle this time of year, we can find a great role model in this woman named Anna. Notice, beginning with verse 36, Anna was very old. That's an understatement. She's over 100. She had once been married, but only for 7 years. Then her husband died, and notice this, and she was a widow for 84 years. That's a lot of lonely years. And Anna never left the temple, but worshiped God. See, this is not some weird church lady. This is a woman who had experienced deep hurt in her life. You know why she's always at the church? Because she's got nowhere else to go. She's holding on to God because God is all she has. And in her loss, her pain, and her loneliness, I don't want you to miss what she does. Verse 38. Says she came along just as Simeon was talking with Mary and Joseph, and she began praising God. Can you believe that? She began praising God. Think about that. With all of her loss, with all of her pain, in all of her loneliness, she chooses to worship and thank God anyway. Simeon experienced the gift of enough because he expected it. Anna experienced the gift of enough because her life was full of unmet expectations. And can I just be honest with you? Some of our deepest, most authentic, most personal, most real connections with Jesus are going to come in the most painful moments of our lives. And I wonder if that's what the psalmist was thinking when he wrote these words in Psalm 5. But let all who take refuge in you rejoice. Let them sing joyful praises forever. Spread your protection over them, that all who love your name may be filled with joy. The joy of Christmas ain't going to come from a perfect holiday, a perfect family, or the perfect gift. It's going to come from trusting that Jesus is enough, period. And if you're here today or you're watching online and you're struggling this holiday, I want to personally invite you to join my wife Terry and I next Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock right here in Building 4 on our Banks Mill campus for our annual Blue Christmas service. This special service is designed for those of us who aren't fully feeling all the holly, jolly, cheerful time of the year. For those of us who are hurting and struggling at Christmas, this is an opportunity to gather, not to simply sing sad songs and be sad sack people. This is a chance for us to gather and remember that Christmas is the sufferer's holiday. Christmas is our holiday because God is with us in our suffering. God's walking in the dirt with us. And we're going to gather and remember that. And through tears, through joy, through it all, we're going to experience the gift of enough, even if we've lost so much. I know it feels like you're alone, but I promise you don't have to be lonely this Christmas because God is with us. And we often feel His experience, feel His presence through the people around us. And I can tell you from my own journey, you're surrounded here at Cedar Creek Church by people who clearly reflect the heart, the love, and the hands, and the feet, and the hugs of Jesus for all of us who are struggling. You want to experience the gift of enough? Have the right expectations. Embrace Jesus in your pain. And then finally, number 3, share the hope with others. Share the hope with others. Anna not only found the hope that Jesus brings, but she shared that hope with the people around her. Look at the last part of verse 38. It says, she thanked God and, check it out, she spoke about Jesus to all who were waiting for God to free Jerusalem. Church, we are surrounded by people who are waiting on God to free them. There are people in your life right now that are waiting on God to free them from the sin and shame of their past and their present. There are people all around you who are waiting on God to free them from the bondage and chains of their addiction. There are people all around you who are waiting on God to free them from the emptiness they're experiencing of pursuing self and stuff in this life. And one of the best ways you can experience the gift of enough is to share that gift with others. Remember, there was another group of people who were there that first Christmas who couldn't keep quiet about this gift they found. You know who I'm talking about, right? The shepherds. Notice verse 17. It says, after seeing him, the shepherds told everyone what had happened and what the angel had said to them about this child. Now track with me. Don't let the rain distract you. Isn't it interesting that of all the 30 or so people who encountered Jesus that first Christmas, isn't it interesting that the people who were most vocal about what they found were the people who had the deepest needs in their life? A lonely widow by the name of Anna, and a group of outcast, second-class shepherds on a hillside in Bethlehem. Why is that? Because there is something about encountering Jesus and having Him meet your deepest needs that makes you want to share it with others. So let me just ask, how many of you here at our Ridge campus watching online, how many of you have personally experienced the hope of Jesus in your life? Would you raise your hand and just keep it up? If you've experienced the hope of Jesus, keep it up. Now just look around. Look at how many hands are raised. Now imagine with me if every one of us were willing to step out over the next 3 weeks and share that hope with just one other person. What do you think God could do with that? So here's our next step for this week, because this is something every one of us can do. Somewhere on the pin rack in front of you are a group of little cards. Just get one of these little rectangular cards, right? Find one, move around. You guys do recognize I can see you. I can see whether or not you're doing it. I'm saying everyone, get one card, just one. All right? And when you got it, look up here. Find that card, look up here. All right? It's got an invite to our Christmas Eve service on one side, and it's got all the information about all our other services throughout the next 3 weeks. Here's what I want you to do. I don't want you to take this and leave it with the tip on the table at Cracker Barrel for your waitress. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I want you to take this with you today, and I want you to begin praying and say, God, who is that one person in need of hope in my life right now? Who is that one person you want me to share the hope of Jesus with? Right? You know, here at Cedar Creek, we are very clear about our mission, right? Helping people find their way back to God. But don't ever forget the fact that that mission has a name and a face. It's not a nebulous group of broken, lost, hurting, hopeless people out there. It's somebody that you're going to see this week or next week or the week after. The mission has a name. Ask God to show you who you can reach out with. The hope that you have received, to share that hope with you. Because I promise you, if you do that, I don't care what anything else happens in your Christmas celebration. I don't care how weird and awkward your family's going to behave. I don't care what happens with your finances. You are going to have a great Christmas, because that's where the joy of living in and with the gift of enough. Imagine. Let's just watch God do another Christmas miracle right here at Cedar Creek Church. I'm going to close this morning with these words of Simeon, because I believe they are the ultimate reminder of what this season is all about. Notice what Simeon says. I have seen your salvation, Lord, which you have prepared for all people. He is a light to reveal God to the nations. And Lord knows the nations, our neighbors, and our community are desperate for light and hope. And there's no better time than Christmas than to share that message with them. Would you pray with me? Wow, Jesus, you amaze me every time I open your word. Every time I'm reminded that not one word, one paragraph, one letter is there just to fill in the space so your book would be big enough. It's there with a truth and a principle and a purpose for us to live in. So Jesus, help us be more like Simeon and more like Anna. Over these next 15 days, Lord, in the midst of all the chaos, help us to be people of hope, who carry a message of hope, who are living in that hope, no matter what we're going through. We need you, Lord. Thank you for Christmas. It's in your name I pray. Amen.